In the opening scene, Glow rushes out of the house holding a pair of binoculars. She uses the binoculars to observe a couple walking and talking on the beach, waiting patiently for a proposal to happen while talking to a man over the radio. The couple, Adam and Susanna, get serious and Adam confesses that he doesn't plan on getting married to her, adding that he didn't want to disappoint her. Susanna, who put her life on hold because of Adam, now feels upset, but he says that she should have started a business without him. He apologizes as she says goodbye and they both walk in opposite directions. Glow notices this and notifies the man on the other end that things are not looking good. Just then, Susanna's sister, Avery, walks in on the man who turns out to be her father, wondering what is going on. She finds out that they're spying on Susanna and Adam. She thinks Adam is proposing and is excited as she tells Glow, her mother, to inform Susanna that she'll be the maid of honor. But her happy bubble bursts when she's told about the breakup. Susanna walks up to her mother and hugs her. Avery tries to comfort Susanna, but she is upset that Glow told Avery about the breakup. However, Glow wasn't expecting a breakup. Susanna then asks her mom to inform her dad that she needs a break from work, but her dad has already heard it over the phone. He tells her not to worry and that she can take all the time she needs. Annoyed, Susanna leaves, glaring at her mom. In the next scene, Susanna is driving her car while listening to soft music when suddenly, her car tire pops. She hops out of the vehicle and makes sure it's safe before taking out the spare tire. A car driving past stops by and asks if her car tire has gone bad, which she confirms. She needs a jack, but her sister took it and did not return it. Nate goes to the back of his car to search for a tire jack. He eventually finds one but continues to search the car. Susanna wonders what he is looking for and finds out that he's looking for a manual as he has never replaced a tire before. She's surprised and asks for his name. They introduce themselves before Nate picks up the gear and walks towards Susanna's car. They fix the tire and Susanna thanks him. Susanna then asks if he is from Georgia because of his accent. Her question surprises him because he thought he was blending in with them, and he reveals that he's from Cambria. Nate reveals that he's in town to meet a family friend, asking if she knows Mrs. Waller, and she says that she does, adding that the woman's name is on half of all the buildings in town. Susanna finds out that he works in public relations and she tells him that she is a landscape architect and is trying to start something herself, which he is impressed with. She ends up talking about her breakup with Adam and how she is trying to move on. She apologizes for bringing up her ex-boyfriend, but Nate reassures her that it's okay and that he's happy to listen. As he walks back to his car, Susanna tells him about her former plans to start a landscape business with her ex-boyfriend, and Nate shares that his plans have also changed and are proving to be quite difficult. They get to his car and Susanna returns the tire jack to him, and he surprises her by giving her his handkerchief. Susanna notes that she has not seen anyone their age still carrying a handkerchief, and jokingly asks if he is a time traveler, which makes him smile. She accidentally stains the handkerchief but promises to clean it and return it to him, to which he agrees. To his left, there is a tree that he finds incredible, and Susanna tells him that it is called a lover's oak, with a legend attached to it. According to the legend, any couple who becomes engaged under the tree will stay together forever. Susanna had fantasies of being proposed to with twinkle lights decorating the tree, but none of her dreams seem to work out. Nate laughs and tries to make her feel better. Walking to her car, she remembers the country Cambria and mentions that the country is breathtaking. He smiles and opens the door for her. Susanna promises to return his handkerchief clean before driving away. In the next scene, Nate stands in front of a building with his back turned against John, who asks for the car key. John scolds him for driving by himself and making him almost lose his job. Nate says that he needed to clear his head, adding that he helped someone along the way and also got his hands dirty. It appears that Nate is a prince. In the next scene, Susanna is in her house, constructing on a piece of paper. Avery walks in and tells her that she never liked Adam. She hugs her and she smiles, knowing that it's a lie. Avery admits that she liked Adam, but what matters is that he broke her sister's heart. Avery wonders if her sister is going to start her business, but Susanna is confused and doesn't know where to start. Avery knows her sister can do it and advises her to use her certificate. She spots the handkerchief and wonders where Susanna got it from. All Susanna says is that good things can happen on a lousy day. The next morning, Nate sits with Mrs. Waller, who asks him if he is enjoying his stay. He commends Mrs. Waller's hospitality. She mentions that he reminds her of his father when he was younger, but Nate wishes he is half of the man his father is, and she assures him that he will be better than his father. Mrs. Waller hopes he could meet people during his stay, and he says that he has met someone, which surprises her as he has been home since he arrived. He reveals that he met Susanna, who's a landscape architect. Mrs. Waller is surprised that he met Susanna and asks if he is sure she is a landscape architect, which he confirms. In the next scene, Susanna is assisting her sister in her parents' gardening shop. She asks Avery to check up on their father, Jibbs, who is late. Avery asks why Susanna can't check up on him herself. Susanna replies that Avery will have to do all the work if she goes. Avery, not wanting to do the work, leaves. While arranging the store, a customer comes in and assists Susanna in lifting a pot of flowers. It turns out to be Nate, and he is surprised to see Susanna, who wonders what he's doing at the shop, but Nate says that it is fate, Mrs. Waller needs assistance in decorating her garden and he thinks Susanna is perfect for the job. But she rejects the offer, saying that she cannot decorate Mrs. Waller's garden as she's still an amateur. He encourages her to do it, but Susanna refuses, not wanting to embarrass Nate, who had recommended her. Just then, her phone rings, but she rejects the call. A message pops up on her phone and she reads it. Nate watches her expression change and asks what happened. She tells him that she has to go to the hospital as Avery has taken their father there. He offers to drive her and they bolt out of the shop. At the hospital, Susanna runs into the building and asks the nurse for her dad. She's directed to the room and she rushes inside. Susanna asks Jibbs if he's okay and he confirms that he is, before turning to scold Glow for bringing him to the hospital. The doctor reveals that he has stress-induced heart palpitations and advises him to rest for a while. But Jibbs stubbornly refuses because it's springtime and they are busy. The doctor couldn't care less about this and makes it clear that he doesn't have a choice. Jibbs is told to come for a checkup the following week as the doctor leaves. Glow, Avery, and Susanna agree that Jibbs' health is more important than his store, and they can figure things out. But Jibbs says that they'll need someone to help, especially with lifting things. Nate walks into the room and volunteers to do that. Later on, Susanna, Avery, Glow, and Nate walk out of the hospital and Susanna tells Nate that he doesn't have to work in the shop, but he has no problem with that. Avery interrupts to make sure he's aware of what his duties will include and Nate is fine with it. Glow asks him what job he does and he reveals that he's a public relations officer, but assures her that he will be of good help to them. Susanna then tells her mom and sister that Nate is staying at Mrs. Waller's house. Nate suggests that Susanna helps design Mrs. Waller's garden while he helps around the store. Avery is surprised to hear about this and wonders if Susanna will accept the offer, but Susanna rejects it once again. Nate continues persuading her and manages to convince Avery, who thinks it's a good opportunity for Susanna. Glow asks for a few moments with her girls and she asks Susanna if she trusts Nate, and she reveals that she hasn't known him for long. Avery points out that Mrs. Waller trusts him and they all agree. They inform Nate he could come by the next morning, which he is glad to hear. Meanwhile, in the market, a man seems to be looking for Nate. The next day, Nate arranges the stack of seed bags, and Glow remarks on how fast he is. Susanna agrees that he's very helpful. When they are done for the day, Susanna escorts Nate out of the shop. She returns the handkerchief and Nate smiles, thanking her. He informs her that he has spoken with Mrs. Waller, who is ready to chat with her. He encourages her and tells her to not be afraid. Susanna agrees, finally taking the opportunity that he has been dangling in front of her. She sees dirt on his face and cleans it off, unaware that their pictures were being taken by a paparazzi. In the next scene, Nate arrives at home and is greeted by John's nagging. He tells Nate to come back to his senses, but Nate ignores him and starts talking about his day, detail by detail. He leaves to take his bath and reminds John to wake him early the next morning. In the next scene, Jibbs complains about being served decaffeinated coffee, and Glow reminds him that he cannot take caffeinated coffee for a while, because of his condition. Susanna walks in, dressed for her job, and her father comments that she looks professional. Glow suggests that they invite Nate over for supper while Susanna bids them goodbye and leaves. In the next scene, Susanna goes to Mrs. June Waller's house and she is welcomed by John. He asks if she is Susanna and she says yes. He introduces himself and Nate comes down, introducing John as an old mate from the Navy. Nate takes her to meet June, who praises Susanna for being the valedictorian. She is surprised that Mrs. Waller remembers her. Susanna, June, and Nate walk in the garden and Susanna evaluates the look of the garden. June is impressed and gives Susanna the job, allowing her to have full access to the garden as she has to travel to Europe. June leaves as Susanna and Nate clink glasses and toast to fate. Susanna stays behind and starts making plans on how to transform the garden. Nate watches her from behind when John joins him, mentioning that he understands why Nate has been busy, but Nate denies it. In the next scene, Susanna and Nate go to pick flowers and things from the store that could make the garden beautiful. They return to the garden and she arranges the flowers in a boat. Nate compliments her. Meanwhile, a paparazzi is publishing news on Nate. At the Truth's house, Nate is having supper with Susanna's family and Jibbs asks why he quit his former job. Nate simply replies that he has other work to do. Glow comments that Susanna is working Nate to the core, even though he's in town to rest before starting his new job. Nate laughs and Avery suggests that Susanna take him around town, stating that Susanna used to show people around the town when she was competing for the Peach Princess post. Nate is surprised to hear this news of Susanna's past and laughs. Afterward, Susanna walks Nate to his car and he asks if he could call her the Peach Princess. She explains that it is a family tradition and she was 16 then. He understands because family tradition is important where he comes from. He asks her if she could take him on a bike tour and she agrees. In the next scene, Nate sits in the living room when John shows Nate the article that was written about him. Meanwhile, back at the palace, Nate's mom is sitting at the dining table. The day's newspaper is brought to her and the headlines are about Prince Nathaniel and his American girlfriend. She's pissed off and drops the paper. The next day, Susanna drives to Nate's house and he welcomes her. She lets him know that she's aware that he's a prince and is annoyed that he hid it from her. He asks for a chance to explain things to her and she decides to listen to him. He informs her that this is the last time he'll be able to have fun, as he'll soon be king since his father is deceased. Susanna consoles him and encourages him that he is going to be a good king. She then asks him if his marriage is arranged and he says that it's not, but he has to marry someone from Cambria. Meanwhile, Lady Ginny, a lady whom the Queen wants Nate to marry, is being followed around by a paparazzi back in Cambria. She rushes into her car and reads the news. She drives away as the paparazzi follow her, asking if she knows about Nate's relationship. Back at Georgia, Nate walks into the Jibs and Glow store and apologizes for not telling them that he is a prince. He thanks them for treating him as a normal person and says that he wants to continue working there, but his identity is now out so it will be tough. They give him the clothes for workers and thank him for his help. Susanna escorts him outside as they escape from John and go on a bike tour. They drive away and stop at the Lover's Oak for a rest. There, he tells her that he feels free and he is happy to be king, but it means more pressure on him. He wishes she could see the Florentine garden and plans on opening the garden to the public. He stares at her longingly and she suggests that they go home as it is getting dark. Getting to the bike, Nate helps Susanna buckle her helmet and is captured by the paparazzi. The paparazzi man, Morris, receives a call from Lady Ginny and reminds him that she helped him get to where he is before asking for the information he has. When Nate gets home, John shows Nate the picture of him buckling Susanna's helmet and says that his mom has asked him to come back home. Nate calls Susanna to apologize for not telling her goodbye himself and informs her that he is going back home. Susanna feels sad after hearing this. In the next scene, Susanna gets another client who seems to be surprised that she is decorating Mrs. Waller's garden and wants her to come design hers, which she accepts. Meanwhile, at Cambria, Nate arrives home and is welcomed in a befitting way as the future king. He stares out the window as his butler tells him of his coronation and other events to come. Nate's mother comes in and hugs her son. She gives him his grandmother's engagement ring and advises him to propose to Ginny, since she has proved her self-worth, but he reveals he is in love with someone else. The Queen says that it's not possible because of tradition as well as the fact that she has no preparation for the role. She then leaves for a meeting with the Prime Minister, but before leaving, she tells him she has prepared a meeting with Lady Ginny for him over tea. Just then, Ginny walks in and Nate greets her, placing soft kisses on her cheeks. Ginny says she has missed him and talks about the news swirling around about him, so he offers her tea to make her stop talking. In the next scene, Susanna is decorating Mrs. Miller's garden and Glow informs her that they need to hire more people, as Susanna is busy with her new job. Glow encourages her and advises her to focus on it. Meanwhile, Nate's mom discusses with John about Nate being obsessive over Susanna. She says that Susanna doesn't have the right status, and John suggests that Susanna should be brought to Cambria to remind Nate that they're not of the same status, and the Queen agrees. In the next scene, Susanna receives a message from Sir Edward, saying he wants her as his apprentice in his landscape design, which will be due by Nate's coronation. She agrees to this, thinking that Nate pulled some strings to bring her to Cambria. In the next scene, Avery goes with her to Cambria to keep her company. After they've settled down, Susanna goes to assist Mr. Edward while Avery goes shopping. Susanna meets Edward, who's not welcoming and completely ignores her. He gives her a rake and shoos her away. Susanna is cleaning the area and is soon startled by Nate's mom. Edward introduces Susanna to the Queen, but she already knows who Susanna is and ignores her. Later on, Susanna walks with Avery in the garden and Avery informs her that she got some clothes for them to wear to Nate's coronation, but Susanna thinks they won't get to go. Susanna sees Nate and goes to hug him. To her surprise, he is having a press conference and is captured hugging her. He takes her aside and asks John to take care of the conference, leaving with Susanna. They walk in the garden and he asks why she is there. She tells him how she got there and finds out that he had nothing to do with it. They realize that the Queen set them up and Nate moves them to a different building. During breakfast, Nate's mom notices that he is happy and asks what is making him smile. He says that he met a friend, adding that he knows his mom has met Susanna and asks what she is up to. The Queen says that she is creating an opportunity for Susanna. Nate informs her that he moved Susanna and her sister to the guest wings and that he also invited them to the coronation. His mother has no choice but to agree, and in return, he promises to never abdicate because he loves his country. In the next scene, Susanna and Nate have tea beside a lake in a small building, when he receives a call from Ginny, which he ignores. Susanna asks if he's engaged to Ginny and he reveals that people like putting them together, but he doesn't like it. After talking for a while, Susanna takes her leave to continue her work. Nate's mom notices her plan is not working and tells John that she does not think she made the right choice. Nate joins them, having overheard their conversation. He tells John that he has invited Susanna to his coronation and instructs him to make sure there is no obstruction. In the next scene, Susanna and Nate walk together. She's scared to go to the ball because she can't dance. Nate decides to teach her how to dance, a scene that Avery sees, and this puts a smile on her face. The next day, it is tea time for Nate and Susanna, but she is running late, so Nate reads a paper to prepare for his oath. She joins him shortly after and apologizes for being late. She assists him in practicing his oath, which sounded like a wedding vow. Ginny interrupts with a clap and Nate introduces both of them to each other. He has business to attend to and leaves them. Ginny and Susanna clean up the table and Ginny tells Susanna that she doesn't know what she is getting herself into, adding that getting into a relationship with Nate will make her life complicated. Afterward, Susanna walks back to her room thinking about what Ginny had said, and is interrupted by Avery, who says she saw Mrs. Waller. Susanna is happy to see June, who's been catching up with Avery. Avery suggests they go get their ball gown, but Susanna isn't sure if she wants to go. Avery reminds her that they were invited by the prince, and so she decides to go with her. In the next scene, Susanna stands on the balcony, admiring the beauty of the garden. Her thoughts are interrupted by Nate's mom, who asks her what she is doing there. She says that Mrs. Waller said she could go to the balcony and commends the exquisite garden. The queen informs her that it was a wedding gift from her late husband and says that it has to be respected. Susanna walks away, understanding that the queen does not want her there. In the next scene, it's the coronation day. Nate swears the oath and is crowned king. He smiles at Susanna as he stands up and faces the crowd before walking out. Afterward, Susanna packs her things to leave, not wanting to go to the ball, but Avery encourages her to go. After a dance with Ginny, Susanna walks in and Nate asks her for a dance. The dance is beautiful and the crowd stares while the queen gets angry. After the dance, Susanna and Nate talk and he leaves to get a drink for them. The queen walks up to Susanna and accuses her of holding Nate back, adding that he has to marry someone in his country. She says that it will be a good thing to leave Nate, and Susanna walks out, upset. In her room, Susanna packs her things and leaves, heading back to her home. Back at the ball, Nate comes with 2 glasses and a bottle of wine and notices Susanna is gone. At Georgia, Susanna goes back to her normal life with more clients. Chloe thinks she should talk to Nate, but she feels like it is not necessary, making up the excuse that he would probably be busy. Meanwhile, John talks to Nate's mom about Nate's progress and how his meeting with the Prime Minister went well. She asks John if he thinks Nate has gotten over Susanna, but it doesn't seem like he's over her. The queen goes to meet Nate in the garden and asks if he is fine. But he is not, since he can't figure out why Susanna left without telling him anything. His mother tells him it is for the best, adding that Susanna might have felt that it would help him focus on his job as king. Nate believes that he has a right as a king and reveals that he loves Susanna. The queen has no choice but to give in to his request. Back in Georgia, Avery comes to the shop and requests a ride from Susanna, and she agrees, but Avery says she is driving. She drives to the Lover Oak, which leaves Susanna puzzled. She asks why Avery stopped there, but is just told to get out of the car. Susanna walks to the tree and sees Nate on his knees. He asks her to marry him and be his queen. She is confused to see his mother and her parents come out from behind the tree. Susanna asks the queen if she is sure, reminding her that he's supposed to marry someone from his country, but the queen simply wants her child to be happy. Susanna says yes to Nate's proposal and he kisses her, his forever peach princess.